be there, and I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to give a talk about physical activity in VR. I'm professor in the University Rennes 2, and I'm also leading a team in area. So we are located in France, just over there, and Poitiers is somewhere here. And it's my great pleasure to be there, especially because I'm born here. I'm born in Poitiers, so it's a pleasure to come there and to talk for my job in Poitiers. So thanks again twice to Florent for inviting me. Okay, just to explain why we are talking about virtual reality in ISBS. In our group, we are a mix of people coming from computer science and from sports science, and we have formed a group together. And for the moment, this group is leading with INRIA group, with an INRIA group. So we have a lot of academic staff and students. But what is more interesting is that we have some experimental facilities. For example, you can see here this very large stadium. It's 30 meters per 20 meters, fully equipped with Vicon system and force plates and EMG, wireless EMG system. And at the extremity here, you see a very black box. And this black box is a very big immersive room. For the moment, it's 7 meters large, 4 meter height, and 4 meter in depth. So in this environment, you can walk, you can displace freely. You are captured with a Vicon system. Your head is tracked, and you can experience stereo vision so that you can reconstruct 3D objects very close to you as if the object exists in the real world. And the idea is that how can we use this technology in accordance with sports activities to study and to analyze sports or to train sports. So that's the main goal of the talk. So just to explain in which kind of approach we are using virtual reality. So first of all, and most of you are experts on that, we practice motion analysis. So we use different devices, and then we analyze sports motion to extract some fundamental knowledge about motion control and performance. So it's exactly the talk we have this morning in all the session. And according to this experiment, we, in the red arrow, highlight some fundamental knowledge and some hypotheses about motion control and performance. And what we are doing in the team, because we are working with people in computer science and computer simulation, we also try to embed this knowledge and this fundamental knowledge into models and into virtual humans. And we try to control the motion of the virtual humans according to this knowledge to check if the knowledge leads to a normal behavior or a natural behavior of the virtual human. By the way, doing this, we contribute to computer animation and computer graphics community by improving the quality of the virtual humans. And once we have these virtual humans and this real one interacting together, we can put them in a place when they can actually interact each other by using virtual reality and immersive technologies. But why doing this? It's not just to play game, okay? It's because you have the possibility in situation of interaction between players, you have the possibility to standardize the situation completely. You can control half a team of players, and then you have half the team playing with this other part of the players. You can also modify the property of the world. You can change gravity if you want, you can change many things, and you can control all the multi-sensory feedback you provide to the user. So it means that you have a complete platform of tests to evaluate different impact of different things on the performance. So that's why we are using virtual reality, and that's why we are using also virtual humans to make virtual humans interact with real humans. And especially, some people assume that using virtual reality is a good trade-off, is a good compromise between ecological validity, because you can play tennis, okay? You can play virtual tennis, but you can play tennis. And you also have a control of the protocol in which you can control accurately, for example, the behavior of the opponent, which is quite difficult to do in a real environment, in a real situation. So you can imagine situation in duels in which you control completely one of the character, and the other one is the one you want to study. So that's the good point of virtual reality. Another point is you control the multi-sensory feedback. And then it means that you can control sound, you can control touching information, contacts, force, you can control many things, especially visual feedback. And then you can see what are the influence of each modality on the performance of the user. So that's also an interesting approach. Generally, virtual reality is used in that case in two main purposes. The first one is evaluation, and I will show you some example just after, in which we evaluate the perception-action coupling in different kind of situation. But also, it can be used in training. But the problem here is that you have a very big challenge, because when you play, for example, at Wii tennis, you are playing tennis, the virtual one, but you improve your performance in Wii tennis, but you don't improve your performance in actual tennis. So that's the goal of the research, is to make a transfer between the knowledge you get in virtual reality to actual performance, because we don't want people to be very good in virtual environment, virtual tennis. We want them to be good in tennis. So, keeping this in mind, we have also to take care of different factors. And everything somehow is summarized in this figure, in which you have first the user you want to analyze, the subject you want to analyze. First of all, you have to know what is the current state of this user. The pose, the motion, it could be also the forces, the joint forces, the muscle forces, whatever you want. So you need interfaces in order to capture the information associated to this user. And so the interfaces here could, of course, put some inaccuracies or some latency to the system, so it's a problem we have to take care. According to this information, you have a model of the state of the user, and then you can change the environment, adapt the environment accordingly. To this end, you need a scenario, you need a repertoire of motions that the other virtual mannequins have to play, and you will see this evening an applied session in virtual reality where we will go into details and we will show you how to design such an environment and taking care of some problems. And then, when you have this, you can give some multisensory feedback to the user according, again, to interfaces, with also the possibility to have latency and inaccuracies. So everything here in this loop could lead to inaccuracies and could lead to completely failure when you want to transfer the knowledge you get in VR to the real practice. That's the point of the talk. So in my talk, I will address three main points, especially. The first one is perception-action coupling analysis using VR in situation in duels between two opponents. For example, here it will be in handball, rugby, and so on. And also, after that, we will take some time to wonder if the technology can influence the result of the experiment. So that's important, because if technology influences the result, then you may have some troubles if you want to transfer again the knowledge. And again, at the end, I will finish by giving some insights about the future, what could be the future of a decision support system or training support system for coach in sports using immersive technology. So let's move first to perception-action coupling analysis. I just would like to show you this video with a duel between a goalkeeper and a thrower in handball. So this is quite difficult to anticipate such kind of motion. And the idea here is to understand what are the biomechanical parameters that are relevant to anticipate the final trajectory of the ball. Here, it's almost impossible, of course. This is quite an extreme case, extreme situation. And the idea also is to understand how the goalkeeper can pick up information and what is in his performance in picking up the information to anticipate the final trajectory of the ball. So that's the aim of this part. And generally in the literature, to address these points, people use questionnaires. And they ask people, okay, what are the relevant parameters you use? For example, rotation of the shoulder, orientation of the pelvis, and so on. These are the elements people can put on a sheet of paper and say, okay, this is the main point. But generally, this is quite subjective and does not really reflect reality, finally. And so to overcome this limitation, many people use eye tracking systems, and you can see some of them in the booth here. And eye tracking system is a very good solution to list what are the visual cues used by the user or the subject. The problem is, you know what are the cues, you know what time each cue has been looked at, but you don't know which one was the relevant one. which one makes the final decision. Even if I'm looking at something at 5% of my time, maybe these 5% are very important because I pick the information which is relevant. That's very difficult. So the relation to decision making is quite difficult to do with eye tracking system. Another solution is to use occlusion paradigm using video. So for example, here you have a rugby attacker with a ball and try to do some deceptive motion on the left, on the right to pass the defense. And you can cut the video at different times and ask the defender what will be the final direction. And according to this time cut, you know, for example, that if you cut between here and here, you have a difference in knee rotation. So knee rotation is an important point for the final decision of the defender. The problem with that is that you want to study perception-action coupling. Here, you have no action anymore. It means simply you are in front of a screen and you say, okay, I think he will go right, I think he will go left. And it's not perception-action coupling anymore. So it's not perception in action. So it may change the result of the situation. So we assumed some years ago that virtual reality could help to solve this problem. Because in that case, you can act as in a real world, so you can be very close to ecological situation in which you can try to intercept the virtual human. And as you are co-located in virtual reality and the real world, you can also evaluate to which extent you are able to stop the defender and what is the distance between your body segment to the body segment of the virtual human, and you can have very accurate information about the performance. So that was the assumption. But if you do that, it means that you believe that virtual reality can provide relevant environment and can provide relevant information for real situation. But you know that you will work through interfaces. So maybe it's not true anymore. So what we did some motion capture of a duel between a handball goalkeeper and handball thrower. Then we pick the motion of the thrower and we target the motion of the thrower to a virtual human. And this virtual human now is able to reproduce very accurately the motion of the thrower. Then we ask the goalkeeper to go back, but this time he has to stop exactly the same throw, but this time thrown by a virtual human. And then we can compare, we can do some statistics about the comparison between the motion performed by the goalkeeper in real and in virtual situation for exactly the same throw. And the advantage in virtual reality is that exactly the same throw can be thrown 15 times if you want. It will be exactly the same throw, which is not possible in real. And you see, to go fast, that if you see the correlation in the kinematic parameters between real and simulated environment, you have a correlation at 0.97, which is not so bad, finally. So, which means that there is a real reproducibility of the motion in virtual reality compared to real world in this situation for this hardware setup. Okay? So, knowing that, we try to go further and try to compare the relevance of this approach compared to video, for example. And for example, here we ask throwers to throw a ball into the goal with a camera placed at the position of the head of the goalkeeper. And concurrently to that, we capture the motion of the thrower. So again, we have the 3D motion capture of the thrower together with the video. And then we can move to immersive room and then display a virtual environment here in which the motion are reproduced on the virtual human. But we can also display the video. So either the video or the virtual reality system. In each case, it's scale 1. So it means that the size of the character is exactly scale 1 in virtual and in the video. And then we can ask the subject to try to intercept the ball. Or we have two situations. In this situation, it's just perception without action, just showing, okay, the ball will go there, the ball will go there, and so on. So you indicate the direction of the ball. So let us consider that you have here stereo glasses and so on, so you see the ball going through you and so on. And then we try to compare the performance of the user using video and using virtual reality for exactly the same throws. And if you look at the global performance, you see, for example, that normally goalkeepers are able to stop, in this situation, 25% of the throw. This is international statistics. And here you see in virtual reality, they are able to stop 27% of the throws, while using the video, they can only stop 15% of the throws. And if you go into more details, you can see that it depends also on the area in which the ball is finally arriving. And you see sometimes high success ratio in virtual reality. So clearly it means that using virtual reality enables people to stop the ball as very similarly as in a real world compared to using a video in which the performance is decreasing. So a small discussion now. So we have approximation in VR, of course. The virtual human is not a real one. You have interfaces, you have many things like this. But despite this, in this experiment, I'm very careful about that, in this experiment, we succeeded in having, using stereo vision, tracking, and so on, in having natural behaviors of the opponents. So what is good is that you have a eye control and repetitions, so that you can use exactly the same situation and repeat the situation 15 times, 20 times if you want. You are sure that nothing's changed between the situation, which is not the case in real situation. And also, here you can see an example of what is using daily in Ireland for the collaboration with Queen's University in Belfast. So they are using this now to evaluate the rugby players in the Ulster rugby team in order to evaluate their capacity here to anticipate and to detect deceptive motion in attackers in rugby. So it is actually used with the HMD in Ireland. But of course, all of this depends on the technology you use. If you use a Kinect, a Wii, and a simple TV, maybe it's not working. So that's the question we need to address now. To address this question, the first one is you are using a virtual human. So it's not a human anymore. It's just a virtual human. It's a mannequin, a model. And we know, all of us, that a model has some inaccuracies, for example, for the trunk, for the shoulder rotation, and so on. The biomechanical model you use for the simulation of the virtual human is simplified, of course. So also, you have a simplification of the skin. The skin is not deforming exactly as your skin. The muscles are not deforming exactly as your muscles, and so on. So you have a lot of inaccuracies. And moreover, you have some motions you capture, and you want to retarget to the virtual human. But maybe the virtual human is not exactly your size, your anthropometric properties, and so on. So it can raise some new errors. So we know that in neuroscience, Johansson has demonstrated that it's possible just with point light display, so just the Vicon output or the motion analysis output, that you can recognize someone walking if you know these people. You can recognize male and female walking and so on. So that's cool. But if you go to computer graphics, people also did some experiments, and they know that the quality, the graphics quality, may completely influence the way you perceive the motion of the opponent. So that's a very good question. For example, we know that in some cases you have a positive impact using some graphics quality, but sometimes you have a negative impact. But it was not really clear. So we try to clarify the point, taking exactly the same experiment, and then we use the fully rendered character. Here we put off the textures, and then we go to point light display, exactly like Johansson. And again, we ask the user to come and to try to stop, to intercept. So this time you are in action, and you try to intercept a series of throws. But these throws are displayed either this way, this way, this way, this way, or this way. So you have different types of rendering. And you see exactly the performance of the user, because you can measure the distance between the cylinder representing the forearm with the ball, and you can measure this distance, detect if there are any impact, or if there are no impact, you can measure the distance. So if you look at this, and you see simply the success ratio, then you can see, for example, that success ratio is almost the same for these 4 levels of details. But it collapses for the last one, and the last one is simply, the difference between these two ones is simply that the ball is also a point light display with a small size. So the size of the ball is completely changed. So in that case, you have a clear decrease of performance. If you look at this, it's the same kind of answer. So if you miss, the distance to the ball is almost the same. The error you make is almost the same in all the situations except this one. So you could imagine, just looking at this, that, okay, everything is okay, everything is perfect. I can use point light display except for the ball. Okay? But if you go into more details, and if you look at the kinematics of the subject, you can see for this kinematic, so the kinematic of the center of gravity of the forearm, of the arm, which tends to intercept the ball. That's the kinematic we study here to simplify. And you see that if you compare this one to the most accurate one, you have something very similar in terms of trajectories. Okay? It's very similar. But if you move to stick figures and more to point light display, the motion is changing. So the global performance is the same because he has time finally to readapt the motion. So the global performance is the same, but the way the motion is performed has changed between between this rendering and this rendering. So effectively, well, we go into extreme cases, but effectively, there is something important in the graphics quality of the character. Another point is that it's well known in virtual reality that you have an underestimation of the distance. And there are many, many experiments showing that if you have to displace in a virtual environment and ask people to walk 2 meters, they will walk 1.6 meters. Okay, you have 20% of error, and that's very common in very different type of device, even in HMD or large screens. So you have this problem. So there are some explanations about stereo vision and so on. So the question is, okay, is there any impact in precision tasks, such as, for example, the basketball free throw, in which distance perception and distance estimation is very important, because you have to throw this ball 4 meters far from you. So having an underestimation of the distance may fail completely the experiment. So we try to evaluate this using various visual conditions to see if it's really have an impact on the situation. To do that, we did some experiment with experts and novices in basketball, and then we measure this in a real environment with a Vicon system. Then we get the performance parameters, and then we design 3 different types of environments in a large immersive room we have in Rennes. You can see picture here. The first one is a first-person view. So you are in the room, you don't see your avatar, you don't see the virtual ball because you're actually at the place of the virtual human, so yourself are your avatar. So that's the first situation. Second situation is third-person view. The camera is placed 3 meters far behind you, so you can see the ball. You can see the ball you are moving. The ball was tracked. And then the same situation, but we have put some additional information, a series of rings showing the ideal trajectory for the ball. So you can see the model of ball you should throw to help to throw the ball. So we compared the performance of the users in the different situations, and what we have seen is that, for example, here it's ball speed at ball release. If you see ball speed at ball release, in real environment, it's always higher than in virtual environment, whatever the visual condition is. As if you want to throw the ball at a shorter distance compared to the basketball. Here, you have also a difference between real situation and all the virtual situation about the height at which you release the ball. I don't have any explanation, but in virtual reality, people throw the ball at a higher distance. So they throw the ball higher, but with a lower velocity. So finally, they fail. Okay. And they adapt. In fact, they adapt to the task. After some moments, they are able to throw into the basketball the same way. But they need some time. And then they adapt to the task, and the motion is different. You can see here an example with a novice to show you what kind of system we have. So, of course, we protect the screen, so the ball is attached. Otherwise, the screen will be broken, and it will be a problem for the experiment and for many others. So you have the feedback about your performance and so on. And OK, I skip this. So we can see that motor behavior could be influenced by the technology, graphics quality, perception of distance, And we can add also perception of efforts. And we have some example in the team in assembly tasks with a colleague who is in the room about evaluation using an haptic device or no haptic device. Does it change things? Does it change the performance and the way people do the motion in assembly tasks? And it changes, and it does. And there are numerous other factors that can affect perception action loop. Okay, keeping this in mind, we would like, however, to go to training. And we would like to use virtual reality as a support for the coach to train people. You can imagine, for example, a coach in tennis in a real situation is trying to teach how to do a tennis serve. And then, after that, he go into front of a Kinect, he do some tennis serve. He wants people to train in a special style. And then people go back with their USB stick, they go into their Xbox, they go into their Wii, and then they train. And then they train, and they are evaluated, and then the coach can see all the trials he is making at home. That's the final goal. That's the final goal. So the context is we have more and more now cheap system in the wide public that can be used to interact, to immerse people in the system, such as the Kinect, the Wii, and many others. And the question is, when you want to use this kind of system, so you have some technological issues, but also you have some fundamental questions. For example, what type of feedback can you provide to the user? If I want to express, for example, in this Tai Chi learning system, if I want to express that the pose is not correct when you are performing the motion in Tai Chi, for example, I can put the wrong part of the body in red in your avatar, so you know that the position of the arm is not good. But what has been shown is that during the motion, because of the loop, perception action loop, you have no time to correct, and it's completely perturbating yourself doing the motion. It's very good for posture. It's like in a mirror. When you are in front of a mirror, you can correct your posture, but correcting your motion is very difficult. Okay? It's the same problem. So it raises very fundamental question about what are, first, how to detect the problems. So where are the lack of performance? So that's a big question, and all of us in this room are very interested in finding the elements which are in relation to performance, and we have many talks this morning about this. And also after that, once you know which part of the body is wrong and what are the problems, how to deliver the information. So that's another problem. Okay, sorry for that. So to do this, the first question we have is that, okay, you have to train with a virtual coach. It means that the virtual coach in imitation learning has to show you the model he wants you to train. So the first question is, when I'm doing motion capture and transfer and retarget to a virtual human with different approximation, the motion is still correct or not? Is it possible to learn from that? Is it possible to have enough information of the virtual human to learn very accurate motion? And to do that, we try to address the problem with a very strict activity, which is karate. In karate motion, you have very standardized postures, very standardized rules in a set of motion. And what we did, we asked a group to train with a real trainer. The trainer was filmed, so it's not the actual picture. The actual picture is more this one. And the film after has been shown to another group. And together to be filmed, concurrently to be filmed, it was motion captured also. And then we show the virtual human showing the motion to imitate to another group. So we have 3 groups. One group in real practice, one group with video, and one group with virtual humans. The idea is to see here if there are some effect of using a virtual human instead of a real one. And if you look at the result for these 3 motions, if you look at the result, all the 3 groups have improved their performance. So it was a 3 weeks training only. It's a very short time for people who have never practiced any martial art or any fighting sport at all. And you see all of them have increased their performance for the 3 motion. And the 3 motion have different properties: upper body, lower body, synchronization between the body parts, and so on. And you can see there is no statistical difference when using real training, training with video, and training with virtual reality. So that's very encouraging. But if you go deeper, then we have a fourth group which use virtual reality like this, but with an avatar. So he had a virtual mirror, so he can see his motion just close to the virtual coach. So you have this feedback, while together you didn't have this feedback. And then if you look at the result, you can see that for here, for example, for all the parameters about speed, velocity, acceleration, and so on, there's no difference using a virtual human, an avatar, or not using an avatar. But when you consider posture, the posture, position of the shoulder, and so on, then you have an improvement of performance using the avatar. So the avatar could be useful. It's the same conclusion than in the Tai Chi. The avatar might be useful in case of pose control, but not motion control. Okay, so despite simplification, the virtual human seems to be okay to be used for imitation training. But of course, it's very difficult to understand the actual impact of different types of technology on this kind of result. So there's some research to do again about this. What is very clear is that you have a lot of motivation using this system. And all the study and also all the users we had, or the subject we had, were very motivating using this kind of technology and increase the number of repetition and so on. So it's a very promising approach to increase the number of repetition, to make people train themselves. But there are something to take care about technology you use, and if you can actually transfer what you are using in VR to real situation and real practice, because it's the goal. It's not here to play, it's to learn and to train. So to conclude my talk, we could say that virtual reality is really promising approach. So it has been demonstrated for studying perception in action, so the perception-action coupling, and now many teams in the world continue to work on these topics. And also, we want to go towards serious exergames. So exergames is games where you are moving, and serious is because you want to transfer the knowledge to actual performance. And then many questions arise. I will not address all these questions, you understand. And so there are there are a lot of very interesting research to do, and we are really welcome to collaborate on that with people who are experts in performance and training, and we'll be very happy to have collaboration in this. So thank you very much, and if you have any question.
My name is Herman Schwamid. I was asked by Florent to cover the questions now. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, please.
In few of your studies, you compared the normal view, the thrower, with a virtual reality throw, but it was exactly the same throw, those throws. But you show that doesn't make a big difference if you use virtual. But could you also change the virtual reality that you change, for example, and when you throw that you say, hey, I just moved a little bit. Yeah. Because then otherwise you can just use video. Yeah. I was thinking.
Exactly. So just to answer your question, effectively we have the same point of view. We didn't change anything, except that in virtual reality you have stereo vision and head tracking. It means that if I'm doing this, the image is changing accordingly, and I can see depth information more accurately. That's a small difference. But you are totally right, it's what we are doing. But before changing something and see the impact, we would like to know before if just changing nothing, you have natural behaviors. But now that we know that we have natural behavior, of course, it's very interesting to, okay, this I will skip, and we try this, because in the lab we had in the past a director, which is who is an expert in the handball, and he said, this is very important, this is very important, and the goalkeeper is looking at this. And we were not completely convinced, and we play with the system, and we just discard this rotation, and doesn't change anything. So that's a way to use virtual reality, effectively. You can isolate some parameters, something that you cannot do in reality, because if you don't do that in reality, the ball is not doing the same trajectory. But you can skip this, discard this rotation, and the ball continue to have the same trajectory. and you can see if it changed something to the decision.
Yeah, because I'm also in handball, and I've noticed that the goalkeepers, they watch where you stand, especially with the 7-meter throw, where you stand with your foot. So then they look at the foot and at the shoulder, and those two key parameters, they know where you're going to throw most of the time.
We could change this value
Yeah,
and see the
one,
real
yeah.
impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Hi, it's Mark Sayers from the University of Sunshine Coast. What I would like to just get you to comment on is that the karate study was using extremely unskilled performers. Have you repeated this study with people of higher belt?
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
In fact, we only ask experts to come just to have the reference motion. So we use the expert motion to have the reference motion, and then to have a kind of model, and then have an automatic computation of the difference of performance. But we didn't ask these users, but it would be very interesting. The problem is, in fact, when you are using experts, it's very difficult to see if there are a difference of performance, because they are so expert that statistically it's very hard to see. So that's the easy way to use novice.
Hi, Tim Exhale, Cardiff School of Sport. I just wondered which haptic devices you used and whether including haptic feedback altered performance.
Okay, good question. It's for the moment in all the video I show, there's no haptic device. So and it's frustrating for the subject because you want to intercept the ball and feel nothing. But we say, okay, you succeed. It's okay. You have a red light, say okay, and so on. And it's frustrating a little. So other people in my group are working on haptic feedback using, for example, arms, robot arms, in which you can hold the arm of the robot, display, and you can feel the contact, you can feel resistance, and so on. The problem is that the study of my colleagues is, the result is that it's changing the way you do the motion, because you are not using this stick in your hand when you are doing handball, for example. So with some of other colleagues, another group in area, the hybrid group, we are thinking about using something very famous in virtual reality, which name is pseudo-haptic feedback. The idea is to give the illusion of an haptic feedback using as minimum as possible devices. For example, you have vibration system, and the vibration system, of course, is not a force, but looking at a ball arriving to your hand together with a small vibration, in fact, at the integration, multisensory integration in the cortex, you can play with the brain, and you can give the illusion that you get a contact. So that's a possible way to do this. Otherwise, interfaces are very difficult to design in this system.
Thank you very much for your great presentation. Hiro Hobara, the National Institute of AISD from Japan. So my question is that I think the key factor to achieve this system may be the gamification to motivate and enjoy the athletes. So what do you think about the best technique to achieve the gamification in this system?
That's a good question, because the frontier between game and serious game is not so clear. And if you are too much giving enjoyment and so on, maybe people will not train, they just play. And we had this behavior, I didn't mention it, in the karate with the avatar. Half of the group was geek players, okay, and half of the group was not player anymore. And you see differences in behaviors. We ask a psychologist to do some interview, and we ask how they behave with the avatar. All the geek players, they just play with the avatar, like a puppetry, okay? And finally, they didn't learn the motion. But they learn less the motion. People who are not gamers, who are not very interested in video games, they actually use the avatar as a feedback, and they learn more than the other groups. Yeah. So it means that enjoyment and so on, gamification, could be dangerous if you want to actually train someone. You have to really take care about this, and even if this, you know, in all these examples, it's not really fun. There's no game. You just you just do as you would do in real situation to stop a ball. There's no gamification in that. But even with that, motivation was very high, just because technology and okay, so it's kind of fun, you know.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hello, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, you also talked about eye tracking and so on. Did you combine it with eye tracking, the goalkeepers? Because as I say, it's very important to know what's the goalkeeper looking at. And for a trainer, it's very important. And because I know a lot of trainers, they're not into what our goalkeeper is doing.
Yeah.
So it's important for them to know, hey, what are you going to watch for?
We try to use it, but there are some technical problem, because you have some stereo glasses. So you have to use systems who see through stereo glasses. It exists. We did some experiment, but many of them who are adapted to this situation, you cannot move with them. So you change. So you have not to move. So there are some technological issues. And in the booth here, I have seen eye tracking system, a new one, and I'm very curious to see if it's working with VR. But it's a technological issue.
Franck, I forgot to thank you for your excellent and inspiring talk, which gives you some information for the future. Thank you very much.